Hi, friends. Thank you for tuning in to the Concussion Coach podcast. I'm Bethany Lewis, the Concussion Coach. I'm a neurological occupational therapist and certified life coach, and I specialize in guiding people through their concussion recovery journey. I am passionate about helping people understand their injury, speed up their recovery, and reclaim control over their life post-concussion. The purpose of this podcast is to help increase awareness of concussions and the impact they can have on a person's life, and to bring hope to people who have suffered a concussion and those who love them. I firmly believe that sharing stories and knowledge about concussions will bring important light and understanding to this misunderstood and often invisible injury. The information in this podcast is meant to bring that awareness and hope and is not meant as medical advice. The opinions shared are those of the interviewees and my own. If you are suffering with lingering concussion symptoms, I have created a concussion coaching program specifically for you. I will be your mentor to guide you through your recovery journey, offering help with understanding and managing your symptoms, setting achievable goals, and learning how to manage your own thoughts and nervous system in order to get control over your life again. If this program sounds like something that would help you or someone you love, sign up for a free consultation. In the consultation, you'll get valuable information and resources and gain hope for your future. Sign up for your free consultation at the link in the show notes or at my website, www.theconcussioncoach.com. Hi, friends. Welcome back to the Concussion Coach podcast. Today is part 3 of the post-concussion syndrome relationship series with Shannon Clark. Check out episodes 84, 91, and 92 for the previous conversations with Shannon, in which she shares her personal experience having post-concussion syndrome, as well as we talked about being a parent with post-concussion syndrome and the relationship with spouse or partners while dealing with PCS as well. So those were really, really good conversations. Shannon has all kinds of hard-earned experience and lots of wisdom. And today's conversation will be no exception. I'm so excited for this topic. We are going to be discussing parenting children who have had a concussion or post-concussion syndrome, and it's going to be good. So thank you for being with us again, Shannon.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So we both gathered some comments again on social media to help us kind of paint a picture of the struggles parents face when they have a child with concussion or PCS. And we were going to just share a couple of the things that we heard, a couple just ideas of people said they deal with, or tips of places to look or things that might be helpful. So I'll let you start, Shannon.
Okay. I heard about the stresses of school and working through school accommodations, IEPs, and 504s. And this is also familiar for me for sure, this idea that just people in general and kids that are, that they're dealing with each day, they don't understand concussion and what the needs are.
Yes. And those are things we'll be addressing in the conversation. People told me the biggest battle is understanding, parents understanding the scope, the public understanding presentation. It's one of the bigger challenges these kids will face. One resource is the Concussion Foundation. They help a lot of people with parents with kids with PCS. And I know they have like support groups and stuff, so you can check that out. And then a friend of ours said, every concussion is different. My son had one previously and recovered quickly. Part of the angst is not knowing how long and bad it will be. Good practitioners will know this and will not try to put you in a box in terms of treatment. And she also said that the new Apple Watch has an inbuilt ECG, and this helped at times when her son was worried about his heart racing. So just a couple thoughts there. So thank you for everybody who responded and gave us some talking points here. So, and we'll be addressing those things. So I know, Shannon, that we've had you share your experience before, but if you could just give us a quick summary to get us started here, and we'll dive right in.
Okay. So I had my experience with my concussion in 2019. I suffered with post-concussive syndrome pretty severely for about 2 years before I was on a trajectory towards, getting better, which I found at Cognitive FX. And that really led into then my kids also suffering brain injuries. So there was this 4-year period where we had 3 brain injuries in my immediate family. So I did have some level of understanding by the time they experienced theirs, which was helpful. So if you don't mind, I'll just dive in and start telling the stories of what happened with my kids.
Yeah, please.
Okay. So to put it on the timeline of my own recovery, I wasn't fully recovered, but was on my way. So this is really early 2022. And I think she's maybe 11 or 12 at the time. And so she had back-to-back COVID infections that winter. Jury's out if it was really 1 or 2. But anyway, she had very severe neurological changes right away. So she had breathing difficulties for sure. So she had low oxygen saturation. We couldn't find her care. She had obvious signs of brain impairments that you would typically see with concussion. And it was becoming more common that people really noticing that, long COVID people are developing neurological problems. So there was, at least was on the radar. It was in the news. It was at least recognized at that time. But I could not find care for her. I ended up taking her. Well, I'll get into the story about how we worked through school, I think later, but let's just say she could barely attend school. We really struggled with all of this, particularly with her energy, brain function, her autonomic nervous system dysregulation, breathing difficulties, anxiety. I could go on. I would actually consider it more severe and scarier than what I experienced. But to get her on a recovery path, because I had no other option for her, I ended up taking her back to Cognitive FX, because that was the only resource that I could find that had any experience that was willing to treat children and also having success. And when I was there myself, I saw people being successfully treated for the long COVID brain issues. So we went back, and we then developed that following school year a protocol to help her work towards a full recovery. And I think we'll get into the school protocols in a little bit, but she ended up recovering fully from the brain impact. So she still needs an inhaler. But outside of that, she, was functioning at full capacity at some point. So that was within about a year and a half of her COVID infection that she was fully recovered, but on an inhaler. Okay.
Okay, sorry. What are we calling these girls? Because I know you didn't want to use their name, so
right.
let's establish that. Who are we talking about here?
Okay. So that I will call her my COVID kid.
Okay.
Just to be clear. And then my other child then developed her concussion in the fall of 2023. I'll call her my concussion kid. That's to not name her by name. They are twins. They're identical twins, same DNA, whatever you want to do with that. One of them they both had COVID infections at the same time. One of them developed severe impairments from it, sent us on this, path. The other one did not. The other one recovered quickly. The other one was barely symptomatic. Okay. So do that with what you want.
Yeah.
Do whatever, it's its own twin study, I'm sure.
Yeah.
So after my COVID kid is more in the clear, doing better, that fall, I have a concussion kid. The concussion kid is, I'm out doing my own thing. I get a phone call from the school nurse. We think your daughter has a concussion. I'm like, are you kidding me? I mean, can you just imagine?
No, I cannot even imagine.
But here's what I had going for me. I knew what I was doing. And what also was different in this landscape was, since my concussion, some newer resources came into our area. So UPMC, University of Pittsburgh Medical Center, they have great concussion research. They opened a branch in our area. So I knew of them. I referred people there. I knew I was exactly gunning for them. So I picked her up, drove her to a UPMC urgent care. And in the urgent care, I kid you not, I cried because I witnessed the best concussion screening I had ever seen. And I bet you haven't heard that on your podcast.
No, this is the first.
And yeah, it was a little awkward because I brought up, so we go there, and I'm sure this is formalized in their urgent care clinics. And the guy who did it was just following his protocol, which I loved so much, that this was just normal for him. Mm. And she had her vestibular function checked. It was like basically a vestibular oculomotor screening. So all these evaluations built into what she was doing. And then at the end, she, was referred to a concussion clinic. And I just looked at him and was like, do you have any idea what a difference this makes? Like, people do not get this. Like, thank you.
Yeah.
I loved so much that he seemed clueless as to what I was talking about. That was his own, it was a really precious moment. So then this is kind of a funny story. So we were referred to the clinic, but it took I don't know, 2 weeks to get in, I'm estimating. So we also had to follow the school policies in terms of their return to sport and what they were doing. So they have their own doctor and their own processes that come in and checks the kids with concussion. So I am formally not under a concussion doctor yet for her. So we go and we try to do the school policy. So I walk into the most archaic system, like, oh my God. So let me just tell you how awful this was. So this is how it was then. It has since changed, thank God. But at the time, so there was a doctor that came in once a week to check on the concussion kids. There was no evaluation of their functionality involved in those evaluations. There was only a symptom checklist that the kids completed. And they talked to the doctor about their symptoms. And then they waited until their symptoms turned to 0, self-reported. And then they were able to return to their sport.
Oh, wow.
So now imagine me in that conversation. That was, I couldn't even deal with it. I was like, you really are letting these kids self-report their concussion recovery? Like, what? Okay. So I was like, well, we're not doing this. We're going to follow the UPMC protocols. So you'll be hearing from me, So this then creates this, interesting dynamic. And they were open to that. Like, okay, yeah, if you have doctor guidance, we'll follow your doctor's guidance. That's fine. But then I was discovering then, okay, I'm going to be battling paradigm differences. I'm going to be right in the middle of this because UPMC's return to sport, and it was my concussion kid was playing basketball at the time, so she's going to have to follow a return to sport formal protocol. Their philosophies, which I agree with, is that as long as your symptoms are within a tolerable zone, that movement and your activities are part of your recovery journey, not that they start after we wait for you to recover, right? So these were the two paradigms that were going to be at odds. So I was coming to them saying, okay, well, UPMC wants my daughter to be at basketball practice, but she also needs school accommodations. So, and in their mind, I think, well, kids don't go to their sport until they're fully in school. I say, no. Her sport is going to be, as long as it's done in a non-contact way and she's doing safe movement exercises that help her, that is going to be part of her recovery process. Mm-hmm. So the school, was a little uncomfortable with that. We did it. It happened. It was tricky to navigate that, very stressful for me, but that was part of that. You do the mama bear thing, you do what you need to do for your kid. And I think one thing I did that was smart for both of them was I went in there with health data to advocate for them so that the people that I was meeting with, the guidance counselor, the school nurse, and so forth, understood where we were at and what we needed to do, because I had fully expected them to not to be knowledgeable and fully up to date on what needed to be done. So yeah, I didn't do that, which I think helped. It was just, she was a little different, because then I felt like for the COVID kid, with her process of how the school was embracing her and her accommodations, it was more like, well, we don't really understand this long COVID thing, but we do know we have other kids in the school that are struggling too. And they were also like, well, you're the one asking for the most accommodations. But, we're open to whatever your doctors are saying needs to be done. Mm-hmm. But with the concussion, there was, preconceived notion. Your daughter should follow this protocol, right? She should be symptom-free. She shouldn't be doing her sport, and she should be better in a month. And now that we've crossed the 1 month line, it transitioned more into a process of me having to prove the validity that she is still suffering. And it was really the stress of managing the teachers and so forth. So I found dealing with the school with concussion to be far more stressful. I would consider that my primary stress.
That's so
her recovery.
What kind of health data did you bring in to help them understand?
Everything I had. Well, with coming back from Cognitive FX, I had an entire binder.
But not for her, right? Like, this was not for your concussion kiddo.
Oh, not for her. No, but I did have information from the clinic because they do, at least if you go to UPMC, they do impact testing and they do other testing, and they'll write up a letter of summary of whatever you want to. They were very good about giving me whatever I wanted to do what I needed to do, and they wrote many letters on my behalf in the battle that we had with the school and their teachers.
That's awesome. And maybe, I don't know if we'll get into this more later. You let me know if this is something you were planning on talking about later, but that, like, how to show up as a parent. I know, like, the mama bear thing, like how, like, what kinds of things you had to do, like what those conversations ended up looking like. I would be really interested in hearing all of that. But is that something we were going to?
Oh yeah. Later? Yeah. I think I can say the first thing, just comment on mama bear. I think there's a lot of differences in these scenarios, right? I had my own concussion. I witnessed a few in my children, but I can say that, anxiety is a symptom of PCS, but my anxiety related to my children's recovery was way higher than it was for my own. And so I really had to manage that. And that was hard. So I just need to acknowledge, right? You have an injury. We know you've talked about this in many ways, injury affects everybody. So my main challenge here was this fear of everything and being able to manage myself in a way that, was still in integrity with who I am. But really, you're going to accuse my kid of not trying. We're going to have a problem. It's a little, this is, it's a heavy thing. I can say I needed probably, I had PTSD with my own. I needed different kinds of therapy for myself, but I needed regular weekly therapy when I was helping and supporting my kids through this school stuff, because it was really a lot. And I think even just understanding that your nervous system, you subconsciously, you perceive you're in a fight, and it was me against a lot of people, a lot of people. And it was, and you're fighting for your kid. So
I really, really appreciate you bringing that up, like that you needed support and therapy through supporting your kids through this. That's actually something that hasn't been brought up on here before. And I really think it's important and helpful, hopefully, for people to hear that. Like, it's not an easy thing for the kiddo, but it's not an easy thing for the parent either. And how did you maintain that tenacity? I don't know, the grit, maybe it's just because you're a mama and it's your kiddo, that's what happens. But how did you keep going? Or I don't know, I could just see myself being questioning myself from oh, well, okay, how much do I push? How much do I not push? How do you navigate that?
Well, I think maybe one thing I had going for me is my own experience. And I kind of knew what I needed to have faith in. So I think that's a little maybe different. So I think that one of the biggest anxieties that parents have or people with PCS have is this unknown. You don't know how the story is going to end. You have every practitioner telling you that they can't tell you how this is going to go. And you don't know how hard to push and blah, blah, blah. But I had a better sense of that, I think, because I had done it. And I knew I needed what I needed to push for. And I knew why. I think I had a better understanding as what is at stake. Because I think I personally had experience of what, I feel like those years were lost, and I don't want that to happen to my child. So that's pretty motivating. And I think if I was going to spin into talking about these unknowns, you get into this, well, how hard do I fight for my kid to push through school? How hard are they supposed to push through school? And all, because I think then you start to question yourself, well, what am I fighting for? Am I fighting for the right thing? I don't even know what they need. But I felt like I kind of did because, I felt okay, I know I need to advocate for progress. I believed, because of my own experiences, that we needed to, I don't want to use the word push, but I'm going to use the word push, that the recovery should feel active, that I want my child to be as integrated as possible for what they can handle, and that their strategy for their care should be customized and intelligent based on their specific deficits and their specific needs, not an overgeneralized push or not push. Okay, so to be really specific about that. So as long as they were properly evaluated by intelligent, up-to-date practitioners, which I had that going for me. And they were designed into that push. I felt like, okay, I can believe and have faith in this because, and so I felt like I was fighting for the right thing. And yes, some of that you learn the hard way, but I did also know that, okay, if my child is doing too much right now, we can always pull back. If we're starting to see signs of crashes, or we can design it more intelligently, or we can add more thoughtfulness with fuel, more thoughtfulness with certain drills that help to calm down the nervous system. We can pull back specific things that are irritating, such as the visual content of the school day. We don't have to pull out of school. We can just be wiser. This is not all or nothing. So we can design this. And as long as, my child's making progress and this is working out, I'm going to confidently say, let's go. And no one's going to get in my way. And I want to add this though. I will say I was also uncomfortable at the exact same time. So what I mean by that was I knew how hard this was going to be for my child. And I remember looking at them going through their school days and trying to do their homework and struggling and thinking to myself, there is no way I could have done that in my own recovery. And yet I swallowed that discomfort and expected them to do it anyway, trying to have faith that this is the right thing for them because they're different from me and they are improving and they are making progress. So I just gotta note that was there, right? It's like, I feel uncomfortable. Part of me really doubts this because I do not want to watch my kids suffer. And I know how awful this feels. And I'm going to have confidence in what is right and let the intelligent strategy lead the way. Okay, this is where I would say the intelligent, up-to-date, specific to your child's needs strategy needs to lead the way of improvement, not my mom guilt, not the child's symptoms, not anxiety, not my discomfort, not the child's discomfort to a point. All right. And then you kind of adjust, right, as you go. So that's what I was having faith in. And that's what I was fighting for.
That's really, I think you made some important points there. And that I talked to somebody just the other day, a mama who has a 17-year-old son who's dealing with some long concussion symptoms. And she talked about that too. And I think we might get into this a little bit more later, but she was like, as a mom, it's really, really uncomfortable. I think she used that word for me to watch him like suffer or to push, to like her husband is more of the, like, let's go, let's make him do things. And she's more of the, let's nurture him and like coddle him, like that's, I think, natural mom response. And probably what you're talking about with that mom guilt is like not doing that, trying to let them have that experience and work through it. And it's uncomfortable. It's not a pleasant experience for the parent either. So I appreciate bringing that out.
I need to add to it though. Okay. So it's the fatigue that the child likely experiences is absolutely frightening. I just need to note that. But here's what's also scary and what we should probably talk about is there is research really pointing to if you let that fatigue steer the ship, you can cause more problems. And that is the other side of the spectrum that needs to be considered. So it's the deconditioning that can occur of the human body, brain. I think the word being used now is deconditioning, that if it occurs to a significant degree, can lengthen the total time of recovery. So I guess what I'm adding, I just want to add to this mix of the scare. There's scare on both sides. There's scare. Yeah, I'm afraid to push too hard. Is my kid doing too much? We should also be scared, is my point, of the child deconditioning. And it does balance and it does make it complicated. So there's risk in pulling back too far, potentially more risk than going too hard, experiencing a short-term crash and adjusting, changing course, and further customizing the strategy.
This is just bringing out the point of how complicated this is. Like it feels, I can see how it would feel so overwhelming and so scary. And this is a podcast about hope. So we'll get there. Don't worry, guys. But we just want you to see that this it's not a cut and dry. It's not a like, this is the protocol and if everybody's going to fit into it necessarily. Like there are protocols, there are things, and there are systems that will help. And I think it is like trusting that system and being aware of the individual concerns that your kiddo is dealing with. I don't know. It's complicated.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's uncomfortable no matter what. And so, yeah, the steps toward, you want to try to stay away from the one end of the spectrum of avoidance patterns, being kind of deprived of stimulation. Somebody can get into rumination, and you want to avoid deconditioning, and you kind of be somehow in that spectrum of a progressive improvement strategy.
Yeah. We want to avoid the sawtooth thing of like pushing so hard we crash, and also the staying away from all stimulation and quote unquote resting too much. It's got where there's somewhere in the middle there that's going to be better. And I think that's maybe just knowing that can guide people, like knowing that you don't want to be constantly pushing past what you can handle, but you also don't want to be just like hiding in a closet with headphones and a hat on, right? Like neither of those are good options. It's going to be somewhere in the middle, and it's going to be a messy middle. There's going to be some like, maybe, like you said, like push a little too much, crash a little bit, figure it out. Like that's the process of this recovery. And so if that's happening, you're doing it right. Don't stress.
Absolutely.
But it is going to be uncomfortable, but at least, like both of those extremes are not the best path forward.
Yeah. And there's differences in the way that other kinds of PCS happens, like for myself, but with kids, so kids have these unique situations. Like one of them that's really specific to them is the fact that they have to deal with school. So for me, I took time off work. My work responsibilities can be handed to somebody else that can survive without me. In the school environment, that kid, right, is on these timelines and has pressure and has grades. And depending on the age, these grades can follow the child everywhere. It's just very different. And it's unique to those stresses involved of finding the right accommodations and helping them to be successful. But it's like they're in a system that they kind of have to do at some level, whereas adults don't necessarily have that same strain.
Yes. So yeah, let's hear about it. How do you ready, go? I don't even know what to ask. I'll let you just get scared. There's so much.
Okay, yes. Now I'll just say from an experience on the school accommodations. And mine were different for each child. They're accustomed to the child and to the providers overseeing their care, but they did involve some level of combinations of extensions for tests and extensions for homework, some kind of relief from an inability to tolerate as much time on the computer, and some form of potentially a rest break. So some from as little as a few minutes for my concussion child to having a full class removed in the midday for my COVID kid. And some people, have to go as far as develop 504s and IEPs, which if people don't know, those are more of like a legal document that's used to support either some level of accommodation or potentially specific educational tools and needs for a child with a disability. I did not go as far as to having those documents in place, but I came close and may have threatened it a time or two, to be honest. But, being prepared so you go into those conversations is tricky. So you're asking for accommodations. This is where I said it's good to have some backing, because you don't know what the education is of the people that are making decisions for your child. So I do think it is good to go in with something. And I'm sure I prepared some kind of overview of concussion thing that I, have saved on my computer somewhere for the general education of what's up to date, assuming that they're not. And here is the accommodations that we, need. The ones that were a little different. Oh yeah. So for COVID kids, we had a break built into the day.
Hold on, sorry. I'm going to pause you before you into the individual accommodations. Really quick, 2 questions. When you said you threatened a 504 or an IEP, was the school were they resistant to wanting to do that for them? I feel like in my schools, the 504 at least has been a lot easier, but like, oh yeah, we can definitely do this. Like, was that not your experience?
I could tell that they didn't want to have to do that if they didn't need to.
Okay.
In my situation.
Okay.
And I didn't want to do it if I didn't need to either.
But
because I preferred the flexibility. Yeah, I mean, they don't really have a choice. Yeah, it's part of the thing. But I could tell that there was resistance. Like, I don't think that there really should be, but I could tell that was like, it would have been an increased burden.
Okay, interesting.
Well, in my case, I don't want to pretend I'm reading minds, but especially in the case of the COVID, they were afraid that whatever I was going to do was going to catch on because, I was asking for a lot of accommodations. There were a number of kids in the school struggling with the same thing. I could tell they didn't want that to become a main thing because it was going to be a burden for the school because they were already struggling to manage the accommodations I was asking for.
Yeah, which is unfortunate because those kids probably needed that too.
Probably.
Right? Like it might have been a good thing for that to be more established for kids who are struggling with that. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think at the end of the day, we all wanted us to be simple, easy. Can we just work it out through some conversations and some adjustments?
Yeah. Well, and you're going in to educate and share and let them know what your kids needed. Like that's going to be helpful information for them when other kiddos are having similar concerns. Mm-hmm. And I'm just curious, the other question I wanted to ask before you dive in is like, if a mom or a dad out there is listening to this and is like, okay, I want to help my kid. I want to go and talk to my school. Where can I find good quality, up-to-date information that will let me share, like that I can share with my school? Like what resources did you turn to gather that?
Well, I had it pretty easily within the clinics that I used. So I just used their information.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the cognitive effects blog has a lot of good information. Mm-hmm. And UPMC has some good information on their website too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, or they'll give it to you. There's like pamphlets and resources that people have. But I think Brain Injury Alliance, there's different resources that I think we all are tapping into at this point that have just some basics. I think what's tricky is this, I'll say right now, these schools are hopefully updating their protocols, right? They just might not be fully up to date on this just idea of activity or recovery being an active process is, I think, this sticking point that I ran into, right? Like, okay, my kid still is going to be moving. They're still going to be doing gym class and their sport in a safe way. That isn't necessarily a commonly accepted thing quite yet.
Okay. Mm-hmm. All right. Well, thank you. That's really helpful. And let's, go ahead and share with us some of the accommodations that you got for your kiddos.
So COVID kid had the break midday. She also, we had like maybe I'll just mention the whole thing because, right, you also have a kid that doesn't cooperate, right? I have this child that I'm not in control of, but they still got to do their things that they need to do for their own recovery. They're still trying to get through school and they need a break. So this was like kind of how the day went. So we get up in the morning. Okay, I was willing to drive her to school. I used that as leverage to say, okay, I will drive you to school because their school day started early. She wanted as much sleep as possible. But in the car, you have to do the drills that you do for brain energy. They're basically like 2 breathing exercises and something else. If she did them, she'd feel a lot better and it would help jumpstart her day. So that was the deal. And actually, there was also a phase when the school day aligned with sunrise. And because their sleep was dysregulated, I also added a walk in there as well. That was part of the requirement to get the car ride. So we would get in the car, or go for a walk, get in the car, do the exercises in the car, drop her off at school. There were multiple snacks in the bag for additional snacks throughout the day for additional fuel. She had the ability to take more breaks as needed, relief from the test times and homework, relief from computer-related assignments. She also had a class removed midday, and during that time, she would go and report to the school nurse. And then I had a system with the nurse that was agreed upon, so she'd go meet with the nurse or go to the nurse's office if she was available. But that gave her a space to do some of her recovery tools and things that is specific to her that helped her to recover midday. She would also probably eat another snack during that time, kind of regroup, and then she would finish her day. She also had some extensions on assignments relief for testing, I think, for at least a short period of time. And my concussion kid was more like Well, so they're different, right? So one was more like more like a long haul solution. With a concussion kid, it was very, urgent. So, she's concussed, she's starting right away. She's supposed to have practice. She had, and the protocols with UPMC where she was doing. So in addition to all these homework assignments that she's trying her best to complete, and she had some extensions I don't think her test scores counted for a certain phase, maybe that first month, although she was still trying and she had some extensions. She was also, we made a system where for her physical therapy from UPMC, with the exception of the vision exercises, she would just do them at her basketball practice. So she would go to school. She's trying to do it now. Movement helped her to feel better. So she went to her practices. She did not do anything that would put her at risk for any contact. But when her teammates would go to actually scrimmage or do something more intense, then she would go to the side and she would be doing her physical therapy work at that time. So it was built into her day. And then she came home and she would need to do her vision.
I love that idea. Just throwing that out there. It's a good option, I think, for people whose kids are in sports. Let's just, note that. Okay, keep going.
So like elaborate systems, a more mental load for me to figure out. But once in place, it was also unloading some of this burden from myself of having to, it was, how can I be creative to not be micromanaging my children right now? Because on top of everything else, that's so stressful. So if I could bake it into the car ride, if I bake it into their practice, I will bake it in wherever possible. That is not me. I even hired a coach at one point for the COVID kid so that some of those one-off conversations were not had by me. And then those were the systems with the accommodations. I know it's supposed to be mostly about accommodations, but that all worked together to help support what they needed to do for their recovery.
I really appreciate you bringing that up, because that's one of the things I know, just not even, with my kiddos, if there's something that that they're in or that they're trying to do, and I'm the one that's supposed to instigate it with them, it doesn't go very well usually. It's much more helpful to have somebody else, like you said earlier. I'm going to quote you because before we got on, I was telling her about my one kiddo who I feel like has a harder time right now. And she was like, you are officially the person he shows his worst to. It's an honor to be that trusted person. I'm like, oh, right. An honor. I just remind myself of that. But as the honorable parent there, it is so hard to have to feel like you're trying to get the kid to do this thing and they're pushing back, partly because it's you and partly because they don't want to do it. But if there's another, the car ride, having them do it at practice with their coach, hiring somebody to help with that and do the actual work with them, that is, I think those are really good ideas. If you have any other thoughts or suggestions for parents out there, that would be helpful. But this is great.
Well, I think I'll just branch into that subject just a tiny bit, because I just want to acknowledge, being the parent here in this situation. One parent, as we talked about in our previous podcast, typically carries more of the cognitive load of health challenges. Typically the mom. Doesn't always have to be, but just acknowledging that that's a thing. So not only does you have you have the emotional load, of the fear involved and the grief involved and the fear and all this stuff. Now you have a higher cognitive load. You're overseeing stuff. You're navigating the healthcare, the appointment creator, the transporter, the enforcer. It's a lot. And so let's just acknowledge that, validate it. Okay, it's too much. It's too, unload it wherever possible. Do not, try not to expect all of that from yourself, even though it is the automatic thing to do, if you can, because it's hard and it strains the relationship between you and your child when you become their enforcer, right? So now you're in a power struggle and it's like, oh, I was your mom yesterday, but today I'm your health coach. This is going to be fun. Let's go. No, the child doesn't like that. And you don't like it either. I think a good idea for that is to at least just talk to the child about it. Just acknowledge and validate it. I have told my children on many occasions, I'm sorry, you don't like that I'm doing these things. I promise you, I don't like it either. I don't. I do not want to have to do it. I will because I love you and I need to do what's right. But let's just make this easy on each other. What can we do? Just call it out and at least empathize with it, like, and just see if they have any ideas, because they might have ideas on how to make it easier or what would work best for them. And you can be open to that and just try to relieve some of that. And even just validating their condition, I think validating how they feel can also help take some of the strain off of it. Because I mean, it's like anything. If you come home and you're talking about how rough your day was and somebody's going to tell you what to do, it doesn't go well. Right. So at least, validating your kid and just being like, this is really hard. I can't imagine what this looks like. Dealing with school on top of this, and then you have me nagging you. You're a good kid. I want to try to help you through this. And then you can get into, here's what we need to do. This is hard. How are we going to do this? That kind of a conversation, I think, can be more partnering and validating and help get you on the same team more so, instead of feeling like a little bit on a different team. Like nagger and child, it can feel like opponents at times, so that you can get on the same team and make the brain injury the thing you're overcoming together. That makes sense.
Yes. Oh, I actually really love that. So good. So yeah, so many good points. Thank you. Yes. What else would you like to share with us about all of this?
Oh, goodness. Well, so just going further into the whole parenting thing. So I just want to also acknowledge you have a child who's going to be less cooperative, potentially more moody. I think when I compare the differences, the different kind of injuries, I feel like for myself, I became more grumpy and tired. But I feel like with the kids, it was just more like, I guess they don't have fully developed brains yet, right? So it's different. Like they kind of like regress emotionally, It's like, oh, I have 3-year-olds again. Oh, okay. Like, here we go. So, but that's okay, like that's part of it, but it does make it harder to navigate all of that. It's just a less mature brain, and it's a vulnerable brain too. It's more of it's just the importance of trying to get the appropriate care as soon as possible. The idea that children are more resilient is a myth. So.
They are, though. I mean, our brains are plastic. So I just want to remind people that is true.
Right. That part. Mm-hmm.
That is true. But kids do need help, and as soon as possible. So yeah, I think that's put out there. Yeah.
Yeah. This idea that, well, I think, people are more likely to brush it. I guess I'll put it this way, more likely to brush it off when a kid gets knocked in the head. And I'll just say, please don't do that. That's my point.
Be on the lookout for what might, changes in behavior and I think that's something too, like, especially with little kids, it's not going to show up as them saying, oh, I have a headache and now I need to take a rest and go lay down for a little bit. Like it may come out as regression. Like they may be way more whiny. They may like have more tantrums. They may do things that like they hadn't been doing for a while or like it might show up. It might look different when they can't explain it. And teenagers might be a little bit better at explaining what's going on for them, but I don't know, the brain injury just makes everything harder. So it's can't even like put into words what's going on, but especially with little ones, I think. So,
yeah. Oh, I'll add two things. I'll say, I know in the past episodes, I've talked about the idea of fuel and calming being so important. I think it's almost more important because of this. So like, I know that we tend to just throw snacks at kids to help them sometimes with their moods as parents. Yep. So I don't think this is any exception. So they seem to need to eat more. And I would also add, one tool that I found particularly helpful it's called the relaxator device. I think it's on consciousbreathing.com. And so, because one of the ways to calm down symptoms, if it's due to these threat responses that we've talked in the past, is to slow exhales. And it's kind of tricky to figure out what works best for each person. But the relaxator device, you can customize the degree of resistance that helps to lengthen the exhale. It kind of looks like a pacifier, and it's kind of overpriced for what it is because it's like this plastic thing, but it's not overpriced for the value it can bring. Is my point, because I got one of those for everybody. Just here, everybody gets one, but it helped me so much because it can calm things down when things start to spiral. It can become a tool to help soothe, especially for a child. It's just easy if they find a setting that they like, they find the most relaxing, they can just use it to calm themselves down. And then you don't have to be the one to calm down your child. They have a tool that they can use too.
Yes. Well, and it's something that's like external. They don't have to like think about it or do it. It's just like they breathe through it and then it calms.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, thank you for adding those. I see in our notes here, we're going to talk about not being able to control the child. And we talked about that a little bit, but also the other people involved. I know, and this is something I wanted to ask you about. So I guess I don't know, we can switch this now or we can come back to it later, but I really do want to bring up the topic of when other people don't understand, like teachers and administrators at the school or coaches at their baseball game or whatever, or friends, like all of those are other people that we can't control and who may or may not have an understanding of what they're dealing with. So
yeah, I can just say, I don't know if I managed that one well. There's one, well, I mean, you can't fix it. You just can't. And so it does become more about tolerating the feeling and the grief and the anger that people don't understand, because on the other hand, your other option is trying to control that. And the work of that is just beyond what anybody has capacity for when they're dealing with this. Mm-hmm. So I think you choose wisely with, okay, like I'm going to work on the sphere of influence of what I need right now, which are my supporters, which is right, the guidance counselor, the coaches, or the specific teachers involved. But even if you fight for it, you might not get it. And that's hard. We had one teacher in particular, baby. I mean, I had the doctor for the concussion kid write multiple letters pleading to this teacher to please alleviate an assignment that involved reading an entire book and writing an essay on it when the child can't read well because of her vision impairments. And this teacher would not let go. So we were, and we had no control. Like you can only do so much. And then, so my child is coming home and with bad grades so she was an A student. And now she had a D on her report card. Mm-hmm. We out of my control. And it was so sad and it was so heartbreaking. And I fought within the scope of what I thought I could handle. But I guess my point is you draw the line somewhere and you release what you can control and what you can prioritize. Who do you need? I didn't realize until recently. I think I had asked my concussion daughter what she remembers about that time and what her biggest stress was. And I really thought it was going to be the school stuff and the stress of this teacher. But she said, no, it was people not understanding. And it was the comments that people would make to her. Oof. It choked up thinking about it. But she was like, no, it was the kids at school would, be saying things like, well, why can't you do that? Or when she had to do physical therapy at practice, people would be like, well, why are you doing physical therapy? You had a concussion. And so it was kind of feeling like this outsider, I think, at this age when you really want to belong and you want to feel like part of your tribe and people are looking at you like there's something wrong with you, that she was managing. And I don't think I realized how much that was affecting her. So I think if I could rewind time, that's one of my lessons that I think just check in on that. And you can't control it, but you can at least empathize with your child and you can talk about it so they don't feel as alone in it. Because how much do you want to do? I mean, I know that there are parents who do things like that with certain disabilities, right? They'll come in and do an education for the whole class on a certain thing so that the students are more aware. You take on what you choose here.
Yeah. And I think it depends on what the kid is up for, like my son has Tourette's and he had observed we'd watched some video of a kid who had gone in and taught his class about Tourette's, and Carver was like, oh, I would be up for doing that. Like he was open to that. We didn't end up doing it, but I think, it definitely depends on the kid and the parents. And if that is something that they feel like would be helpful, because a little bit of education really can make can add to that understanding, and understanding can make a huge difference. But you're not going to be able to or want to try to educate everybody, right? Like it's not a thing. And so I think I appreciate you sharing that, your daughter's experience, and letting parents know this is a thing, and something maybe to talk about with them, that how to choose to think about it and deal with it when other people don't get it, because that's not unique to concussion. Like in the world, people don't understand where you're coming from and have different opinions, and like this is a thing that we're going to learn. And so learning it, with a concussion may be particularly challenging because our brains are already struggling, but this is something that is going to be an important lesson. It reminds me too of one of my friends whose daughter has a concussion, who I've had the privilege to work with. She shared that there was one day when her daughter was playing with, she was hanging out with friends. She's a teenager. She was hanging out with friends, and it was like, hard for her to be socializing. It's a hard thing to do, to go out. And she was there with them, and they were deciding what games to play. And they'd chosen this one game, and she knew that it was going to be overstimulating, like a really overstimulating game for her. And so she was asking like, oh, could we maybe do a different one? And the friends were like, oh no, don't worry, you'll get it. You'll pick up on it really fast. Like they didn't understand what she was concerned about. They just were like, oh no, don't worry, you'll be fine. And she ended up just leaving. And I think that would be, that's a hard thing, again, for teenagers to have to navigate and figure out. But one, I'm really proud of her for knowing where her, I want to say boundaries, but like knowing what her limits were, and honoring herself by taking care of herself in that way, and doing the thing that was, it's hard to walk away. And she may, sometimes kids may decide this thing is going to be overstimulating. I know it's going to be, but it's an experience that's worth it to me, so I want to do it. Like I talked to another person whose son went to prom. He actually went to 2 proms in 1 week. I don't know how that happened, but he chose to do that. And so he prepped the week before, didn't do a lot of stuff, and then knew that he was going to pay for it afterwards. But that experience was worth it to him. Whereas, playing this game on this one random evening wasn't worth it to this other teenager. And that's great, right? Like as long as they're aware and choosing instead of just being pushed around or whatever, I think that's helpful. But it's still hard, to validate that for them, and recognize that it's hard to make those decisions for adults too. I think
it's a lonely problem. I think you do become so isolated. And when I had asked my COVID kid the same question, like, what do you remember about that time, or what was your biggest struggle? And she had described kind of like that, but this feeling isolated, not wanting to necessarily be a part of things or have to explain herself in an awkward situation. So instead of doing that, would sort of avoid it. I had no idea, well, wish I would have asked. Whoops. Learn from my mistakes, everybody.
Yeah, right. I think
actually ask your kid what they're struggling with instead of assuming. Yep.
Yeah. Well, and it might, sometimes hindsight is a lot easier. Like the kids, they might not even know in the moment, but
right?
Or feel up to talking about it in the moment. So
totally.
But it's valid, and it's helpful, I think, for people to hear that, to know that that's something that is for their kiddos. Yeah. Thank you for sharing all of that. And do you, any other, I don't know, what would you say knowing that, if you could go back in time, what would you say? What would that conversation look like, and how to help?
Yeah, I think you are right though. I kind of wish I would have done that differently, but I also go back, I know how dysregulated they were. So I can't imagine that they would have had the awareness. I think now it's sort of like that. Oh, looking back, now that I'm all better, I can say that this is what I didn't like. But I don't know if we could have even had that conversation. I don't know if it could have, if she would have been able to articulate it. Especially, oh gosh, open-ended questions. I mentioned that, right?
Yes.
This interview, last thing I want to have had somebody else say, what's going on? Oh, let me write an essay for you on what's going on for me right now. I mean, I don't know. I might have been more attentive, because I think I just noticed that there were 1 or 2 friend things that I I can remember her declining. And I think at that time, what I would have done is maybe commented that I noticed, right? So like, hey, I'm noticing that you're not doing things with your friends, right? And probably just left it like that and just see where that went. Because, I could have imagined, right, that would have been a lonely experience. Whereas, I thought maybe her primary emotion was going to be the anxiety that she was feeling every night, because I certainly heard about that. But what I just didn't hear about was the loneliness.
Yeah, I think it might be helpful. And I with loneliness, again, I think it's validating that, like, it's understandable, and it's, I don't know, maybe trying to give some hope that it's not forever. Like, this isn't forever. It's lonely now, but it's going to get better. I think, I don't know, hopefully that could be a helpful thing. Yeah.
I am glad you said that, though, because that is one thing that I did with my kids that I don't know if other people do. Because, every practitioner is kind of like, oh, I'm not going to tell you how long things are going to take and blah, blah, blah. I was, especially because I had been there, I think that was something I did. I was really clear with my kids, you will recover. I was very clear. And I would say, yeah, it could be a couple months. I don't know, but you're definitely going to improve. Like, no doubt. Like I showed absolutely no hesitation with a full recovery expectation. And I saw no reason otherwise, because it would have figured it out. But I do think there's something about that confidence that is so helpful. Yes. It gets its own fuel. It's like, oh, I'm not afraid of my own disability, so that I can actually focus on my recovery because I know I'm going to be okay.
Yes. Oh my gosh. I really, really love that. I really love that. I think, I don't know, what's coming up for me right now is this idea that we want to know the future. We really want to be able to predict the future, but really, truly, none of us have any idea. What's the problem with deciding that it's going to be what we want it to be? This is what I think it's I'm going to tell myself it's going to, I don't know if this is helpful for people or not. Take it or leave it. But this possible strategy of being like, I don't know what the timeline is going to look like for my getting better, but I'm going to put it at this many months or this many like weeks or years or whatever you want to say. Like, this is what I'm going to shoot for. And then when we get to that, then we deal with it. Like going forward as if it's going to happen. Like, one, I think that makes it a lot more likely to happen, but also it, it's okay. And there's going to be probably that nagging, like, but what if it doesn't? What if it doesn't? That's okay. And you will deal with it when you get to that point. And it doesn't mean if you're not fully recovered by that point, that doesn't mean that all is lost, but you can probably look back and be like, okay, I'm not where I wanted to be, but look how far I have come, and progress does happen. And again, setbacks happen, things happen that are out of our control. So we just need to like be along for the ride, but I think if the future is up for grabs, we could focus on what could go wrong, or we could focus on what could go right. There's no harm in choosing what could go right. In fact, there's only like positivity that can come from that.
Yeah. I mean, the research on the we don't have to go down that rabbit hole on belief in your outcome is crazy. I would consider it a risk to not believe in that. Yeah. Actually. Yeah. And when the what ifs come up, I'd probably just say, of course, anxiety is going to show up and say, what if? Of course it's going to show up. Doesn't mean we believe it. That's fine. It's just a symptom.
Right. So good. Oh, I really love that you shared that. Thank you for sharing that. And one other thing that I was thinking in relation to this, and maybe this is just a conversation to have with kids or with ourselves sometimes, is just the concept of people pleasing, and how, like, a lot of times I think I did do a full podcast episode on this, just like me spouting ideas about it. But people I see push themselves past what they want to or feel like they should, because they're worried that other people will be disappointed, or they're worried that they're going to cause negative feelings for somebody else. And I think there's definitely a place for caring what other people feel and think. Like, that's definitely a good thing. But I think that might just be a conversation you can have with the teenagers. Like, okay, like, let's figure out what is going to be best for you, and figuring that out, and then operating within those bounds and then letting go of needing other people to feel a certain way for you to feel okay about yourself.
Right.
People, we can't, there's Byron Katie talks about 3 types of business in the world. There's your business and other people's business and God's business. And the only thing you have control over is yours. So like,
you can't control how other people are going to think and feel. They might be disappointed that you can't go to this thing with them. And that's okay. Like we feel disappointment. That's something we work through. And and in some ways that's good. That means that they care about you, they love you, and they wish that you were there. Like, I think just framing it for them in that way might be helpful. And again, this is something that I think all of us need to work on, but that might be a good conversation to have with a teenager, especially just this concept of it's okay for people to have their experience, and it's okay for you to protect yourself while you're working on healing and recovering.
Yeah. And something I do add to my teen conversations, or I think anything probably over age 8, actually, they care so much about belonging, right? And so I will just, add, like, at your age, your brain is designed to care so much about feeling like part of a group and part of a tribe. Like that is going to feel like your biggest priority. And that's okay. Like that's normal. But just sort of like putting it out there, like, I think it can help them to not be as much in it and to notice it, like to notice, oh my gosh, this is why my brain thinks it's the end of the world if I don't attend that event with my friends.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Thank you for bringing that up. Okay. I know is there anything else I want, actually, well, I'll just ask this now. You had, speaking of twin studies, we mentioned before, like, I am so sorry that you were such an expert in this, but you've had your own concussion experience, and now you've had twins who had brain injury experiences each. And so, I don't know, just so fascinating. But is there anything you would like to say about that you've observed through this, like, twin study approach of having like the treatment approaches that they had, or how it showed up with them?
Sure. I think the sort of different needs, right? So one was more of an urgent concussion. One was more of a, very like PCS type of scenario. Both programs that we did felt uncomfortably rigorous. Put it that way. Felt like, well, this is a lot. Both came with the concerns and hesitations of, can we do this, and can we handle this, and how is this going to work? But so, yeah, they're structured a little differently. With the UPMC's program, it is covered by insurance. Cognitive FX is mostly going to be a cash pay. Some parts might be covered. I felt like, okay, this is my commentary. So, I mean, UPMC, very, very protocol driven, of course, for good reason, and very focused on the symptoms and the aspects of the concussion. But like the cognitive FX, of course, they were concerned with that, but it felt much more holistic, kind of a comprehensive, integrated kind of things. Like it was really kind of felt like a whole body approach in a way. I mean, they were both demanding, right, the hard work that goes with retraining systems in terms of like vision work, vestibular work. The UPMC's program did not have cognitive work built into what the homework was, but it still felt like it both felt very active. Both had exercise as part of the recovery. The different styles, right? So like cognitive FX, you're going for the boot camp and you're kind of doing homework on your own, which, isn't necessarily for everyone, or may not be able to follow through with that homework part. With UPMC, you're probably going to see their physical therapist or have your stuff updated once or twice a week, and you're kind of accountable into the system that's going to be ongoing until they consider you recovered. So, I mean, I can't complain too much, right? Like both of my twins in my twin study arrived on the other side. Both are doing well now. I felt like that my COVID kid came out, hers was a longer recovery, it was a longer situation, but she came out the other side after that long recovery as, I would say, stronger and better than before in some ways. Like, because I think part of that was because things were just so integrated. Like it was just so comprehensive. Now she still needed an inhaler. I didn't expect cognitive FX to help with that aspect either. But whatever. So there's certain aspects there that I thought were, really great. And my concussion kid came out on the other end, was a more urgent situation. She recovered within that 2 to 3 month time, which I think was slower than what they wanted, but it was good. But on the other end, she still had a sleep disturbance that we, weren't able to figure out, which we then worked out at home and through other means, but she was considered cleared of her concussion, although was not like fully 100% at that time. Yeah, I can't complain, right? Like knowing where I've been, I had, 2 kids, like, okay, because of what I went through, I was able to trailblaze at some level so that they could have a better experience than what I did. So yeah, I can't say I would change anything, like it did the best I could with the different hands we were dealt. And I'm pleased with both outcomes. There's a couple of different ways to pass through it, I guess.
Yes. Thank you. I know we're like getting close on time here, but there's a couple topics that I think would be really, really helpful to just at least touch on. And I'm curious if this is a thing. I imagine it could be a potential concern with one kid who's needing a lot of help. How do you navigate that with the other kids in the family? If there's a family that is more than one child and the other kids are not needing that kind of attention, is there any suggestions for parents?
I do on that. By the way, just as an aside, there's an excellent book from, her first name is escaping me. It starts with a J, last name Faber, called Siblings Without Rivalry, which is an excellent resource for any book for anybody that has multiple kids, that really gets into how do you handle these dynamics. And I think it's the biggest key here is at least acknowledging and empathizing with your other children, how it affects them. Because I feel like as a parent, and you can probably relate this, there's always something going wrong. Like, I can't keep them all healthy at the same time. Somebody's having something going on. Somebody's requiring more of a need at some point. And I think it's just acknowledging, with the other children, empathizing with them when they are frustrated. Or I didn't hear signs of like jealousy for attention during that time. It doesn't mean they didn't feel it. I just tried to acknowledge and validate that I could see how this would be, hard for you because of what we need to do. Like I flew with one across the country and stayed with her. And, that was different. I felt like I had more to say at that point because that was a different thing that I, haven't done for my other kids. To them, it probably looked like a little bit of fun, I promise you it wasn't for her. I promise. I remember carrying her in like she was 4 years old on that last day. But, the siblings don't understand that. So you don't want to create a debate, right? You just validate people's feelings. It's hard for them. They're going to experience something and you just acknowledge it and it'd be a safe place. And, I wouldn't say things like, just be glad it's not you.
But do you think it'd be helpful to say something like, we would do the same for you if you were in this situation?
Yeah, probably after I'd be like, because remember, like injury affects everybody, right? These brain injuries affect everybody in the family. And our previous relationship discussions, we talked about having a space to just validate the impact on that individual, prioritize that, have that acknowledged first before kind of bringing up other things so that you're at least hearing where somebody's at. And then you can bring up other things. And I think just saying like, I noticed that I'm sorry, I haven't been able to take you to birthday parties lately because I've been really focused on helping your sister. Must be really frustrating for you. Just saying something like that.
Yeah. And acknowledging it.
Acknowledging it. Mm-hmm.
Love is always the answer, right? Okay. No, that's helpful. Thank you. I just wanted to bring that up. And then parenting as a team. I know this is something that was brought up by another friend as well, who was talking about how challenging it can be, like with one parent feeling like we should be pushing and one parent feeling like, no, we need to like let them rest or whatever. Like, how do you navigate that?
Carefully. Well, so I think it's good to try to notice it, and instead of being in it, like notice the pattern of it. And so you talk about it like it's a pattern, and know that both sides of that are very valid. It makes sense that a mother, I know, stereotyping again, is going to be more on that edge of like, oh, I don't want them to suffer. They're struggling really hard. I want to be an emotional support. And there might be a partner who's more on the like, no, we got to push, of course. And both of those are extremely valid. And I would say, and you can agree on this as partners, like, look, our strategy would be risky or dangerous if we exclude either of those needs. As we talked about before, you don't want to push too hard. You don't want to push too little. So I think it's like, okay, like we have different priorities, of course, like we're wired a little differently, and that's okay. But we can both acknowledge like what we care about. And I think it could be good. I mean, if it's really escalating, to just have time where you take turn and you listen and you really try to just understand where the other person's coming from, because until they're understood, they're probably going to keep arguing for their point, because they haven't been fully heard or understood yet. Because it could be like a deeper meaning there. Like, and if it's really escalating or getting an ongoing problem, like it really notice that you are really pushing, our son a lot. I just really understand what's coming. What's going on there? It just seems like this is really heavy for you. Like, especially if you notice there's a really strong feeling, because there's probably something behind that. And you might find, well, I had this struggle back when I was a kid, and I wish my parents would have pushed me more. And and like you uncover all this stuff. And then and here's the challenge I would issue. You probably don't understand your partner if you're not brought to the point of compassion for their side. So like, take time to understand where they're coming from. Back up. Of course, you're feeling your own fear, right? You don't want your child to suffer or whatever. Just say like, okay, like there's other perspectives here. I just want to know my partner and why this is fear, right? Like that's some kind of a fear that's coming up. What is this? What is going on for them? And just take the time to understand. And then I would seek to understand to the point where you feel convicted. Like there's some kind of like, oh, like you're kind of moved. And when you can both do that, then you kind of understand each other. And then that can be a place where you're working on it together. So I guess it's being open to influence. Like we're all biased, right? We're in the Gottman research, they talk about the behaviors and actions that are absolutely most essential for any marriage to work. And actually one of them is being open to your partner's influence. And it's a really big deal. But I think it's easier to know that when you understand how biased we really all are. We kind of care about our own things. We're wired. We have a unique purpose. We have unique priorities, and that's okay. Our partner does too. And so kind of coming together and just acknowledging we're different people. And we have hopefully maybe the missing element is not having a doctor that's not concussion literate. Guiding the ship could be, that's not your marriage's fault. But, find, okay, we don't have you want to have a plan. I think the word progress could be key to land on. There's something you probably can both have a mutual purpose around, right? Like we want to have a plan that makes progress. If it's not making progress, then it's not something that works for either of us. I think that's a good boundary to have for your child and for your marriage. It's okay, let's make progress. We can have empathy and support and snuggles, and it can be challenging, and it can involve tolerating discomfort. And that can be and it all should be a part of a good comprehensive strategy for improvement.
Yeah, no, that's so good. Thank you. That's I feel like I'm gonna need to like re-listen to that just for myself. That's so good. I really love what you talked about. If you probably don't understand if you've not been brought to compassion on your side. Like that's really profound. So thank you for sharing that. And for all of this, like I feel like this is gold. There's a lot of really good stuff in this conversation that we just had, and I hope it will be helpful for people. I feel like it's been helpful for me. Is there anything else that you want to make sure that we touch on or points to make in regards to?
I'll just say one last thing. I just want to acknowledge that I don't think I've ever seen a warrior like I have with a parent of a child of a disability, such as a TBI. There's just nothing like it. I mean, I would never want to be in a fight with one of these people. I mean, wow. Like, it's like, I just need to say, like, thank you for what you do. It's amazing. It comes at a high cost. You're willing to pay it. And thank you.
That's so beautiful and brings me to tears. So thank you for having us end on tears here. But no, really, I just, like to add my thanks to the moms and the dads and the caregivers and the people who are loving kiddos who are struggling with this. Hard. It's not easy.
Yeah.
And I've seen, yeah, it's hard, but you're doing great. keep it up. There is hope, and this isn't forever. And I think I really appreciate everything that you shared with us today. And again, this hard-earned experience, the wisdom. So thank you, Shannon.
I'm so glad you listened in today. I hope you have gained some helpful insights and inspiration regarding dealing with and recovering from concussions. My goal is to create more awareness and education about concussions and the fact that there is so much that can be done to improve life after someone has had one. Help me spread the message by liking, commenting, rating, and subscribing to this podcast, and share it with others who would benefit from hearing it. There are more resources available on my website. And again, if you or someone you love would benefit from concussion coaching, sign up for a free consultation using the link in the show notes or at my website, www.theconcussioncoach.com. Thank you. See you next time, and take good care of that amazing brain of yours.